Okay, so maybe you'll see me now. Can you guys, anyone verify that you see or hear me now? Because, let's see. Ah, okay, so you guys see me. So this week we'll start with an interesting thing. I use OBS software. And so this week, apparently, I remembered the update. OBS sent an update, and I accepted it, as you do, because you want to accept updates. And OBS, when I went to start the stream today, they didn't change where things go, because that's, something new. They literally removed features and added an entirely new way to how you have to stream. So it was quite interesting to figure it all out. So I apologize, but yeah, that was rather kind of strange. For those of you that were on the previous stream that did super chats, don't worry, the super chats are still saved in the same way. So I still see them the way I normally would. So yeah, like I said, interesting. I guess every once in a while you're just going to have technical difficulties. So let me go into, real quick, I'm in the chat. Let me open up one more window, if you don't mind, so I can actually get to those super chats and have them. And like I said, they'll save from the previous stream. The good news is, for those of you joining me for the first time, at least we got it worked out. But the interesting thing is that any of you, I don't know, there's probably some of you that maybe watched the live show and then listen to it as a podcast, but the podcast people now get the edited version, which I think is a lot nicer, so they won't have to deal with all this. So at least they won't even know this even happened. Okay, so let's get started. Anyways, as always, thank you guys for joining the Know Your Gear podcast on Fridays. And so I can't wait to see what you guys have to talk about. Obviously, I have to talk about the fact that OBS, boy, never occurred to me that the update would be to totally change the software. Okay. And then Stout Coffee, yes, I see all the super chats. If you super chat me, I see them. I see super chats from the very first episode. Or no, wait, that's not true. I think I can go back 2 years, maybe 3 on super chats. So that's why I said they're there. In fact, let's start the show with a super chat that was missed, and it's on my phone. The viewer sent me an email. Let's pull this up. And apologize for a second. And the email said, Miss Super Chat. That's what the subject is. Aha, from Jay. And what Jay said was, Phil, my question is, I've been playing in a duo where my partner plays acoustic and I play mostly electric. When he takes a solo, my electric rhythm sounds so thin. How do I think of my sound? Multiple amps, multiple outputs on the guitar. I wouldn't overcomplicate it that way. Really, your friends are going to be a couple things. A volume pedal could be a big difference because you are a EQ pedal, a boost pedal will help, a clean boost especially. Anything that basically allows you to kind of set a volume a little bigger, maybe, like I said, there's boost pedals like the Buxom Boost by Friedman. There's a bunch where they have EQ built in them. You don't need something like that. Like I said, I like the Boss EQ pedal will work perfectly for that. A volume pedal, like I said, anything that will allow you kind of set a fuller sound, and then you either rock it back, the volume pedal back, or you use the pedal off. In off mode is your normal sound. And then just like boosting a solo, you need to be a little thicker when he's switching. And that's really common with electric guitars. They are a lot thinner, especially through the EQ spectrum. They're going to be really kind of hyper-focused in a couple frequencies, especially if you're playing clean. You're strumming clean, it kind of goes away. Also, that's why, I've said this before, that's why I like those Dane Electro 59s. Guitars like this, believe it or not, and you don't have to buy, a Dane Electro like this, but there are definitely guitars that are really nasal, and I like nasal for saying mid-range, because I was thinking like nasal, I was thinking of the operator. Play hold, please. But I like it. I like the mid-range sounds. So there are certain guitars that just really boxy and mid-rangey, and they sound fantastic when strumming chords because they do the same thing an acoustic guitar does, which is like dramatically fill up that space. And you need that because if you're in a duo, you know, you are the full band when he's soloing. So, or she's soloing. I didn't see you mention it. So that's what I would suggest is what's worked for me in the past. And if you have a processor or anything like that, you can do presets, all that stuff. But I wouldn't bring multiple amps. I wouldn't overcomplicate things. More gear is more problems for setting up, more things to manage. And again, you know, you can get away. Or you can use my old trick, which is... It's my old trick. I invented it. No, it's just the trick that I've been doing forever, which is I constantly have all my guitars volume kicked back about a quarter turn back. So that's how I set all my sounds on my amps. I've always done it that way. I was playing earlier today, and literally I just kind of instinctively just roll the volume just a little back on the guitar, which, you know, kind of thins out the tone on the amp a little bit, and then set my settings, and then I can always roll that forward. Although that works more for leads and less for what I was talking about. But there you go. That's something I would think about. Mad Chris 2249 says Nasally Guitar is my band's new name. My new band name. That's a good band name. Nasally Guitar. And more gear, more problems. That's a shirt. More gear, more problems. More gear, more problems. I definitely am a fond believer of that. It's funny as a gear channel. I think that's where all the gear channels go awry. You know what I mean? Slowly the focus. That's why I love having this platform, this podcast platform to discuss things with you guys. You know, it's like a deep dive into the workings of the channel. And my channel is like all the channels out there in the idea that it gets kind of hijacked over time. You know, essentially every channel starts out the same way, which is like, here's some choices of gear to help you kind of find the right piece of gear for you. And then slowly they become, here's all the pieces of gear you can buy. Because, you know, that's part of the problem. It would be this is like this live show. It's a lot of the problems that I don't have on the show are alleviated because of the sponsorships, which is you guys. It'd be nice if all my videos were sponsored the same way. I'd be living the dream. But I think we're getting close there. Seems like every few months we get a little closer. Kelvin Mack says just got 34 pedals. He's got 99 problems. He's got 34 pedals given to him. Hey, that's a good day, right? I have more pedal problems, but it's not a bad problem. Yeah, well, you have stuff to go through this weekend. I think I just got rid of more than that. Isn't that funny? I didn't count how many pedals I got rid of, but I know it was after I sold a bunch of pedals to some close friends. I took a box down to the Zims to Zims Music and sold them to him. I didn't even trade them in. I just sold them because I was just help him out. I was like, you know, like he's a nice little store, and so if you're looking for a lot of cool pedals, I just took a box full of them. If you're local down there, you can see a lot of them. I'm sure you'll be shocked. I know for a fact, like 10 or 15 people will be shocked. Like my Prince of Tone, I took it down there, and the Bogner. What was the Bogner? No, there was the Bogner. I can't remember what it was called. Burnley? The Burnley. Stuff like that. When I started my YouTube channel, not when I started making videos, but the day I probably made the first video, I probably owned about a dozen pedals. And then slowly over time, very short, because I started my YouTube channel when the pedal boom happened. And although I wasn't really a pedal channel, still took place in the same time frame. And I, you know, like everybody, I was trying pedals, accumulating them, and I still have a lot. It's still dumb how many I have. And I'm probably never going to go much lower than what I have now. But I really find I keep using about the same 12. About 12 pedals. Not all at the same time, just about 4 or 5 at a time, and then I kind of exchange them out. And it's always nice to find a new pedal. But I just, you know. Okay, so, oh, and in case anyone asks, because it's going to come up, is like, how did I get rid of any Boss pedals? I got rid of I'd like to say 80 or 90% of my Boss pedals. That sounds about right. I think I own maybe 10 Boss pedals now. And I knew for a fact I had probably 80 before, so quite a bit. Maybe 70. It was a lot. I can't remember the numbers. You guys saw them on the shelves. It was a lot. So, all right. Ben Coombs says, I'm putting 30 pedals up for sale soon. Need to clear up some space. Yeah, it's a tough thing. Like I said, in my world, the pedals just seem to show up from the vendors. The companies send them. That's the YouTube game. And that's very exciting because I get to try pedals and stuff. But as you guys know, I just don't make a whole lot of pedals videos. I only make pedal videos of pedals I like. And that is not the same for amps and guitars. I make videos of amps and guitars that I think you're interested in, that I think would be interesting. All kinds of reasons. I've probably a dozen reasons to why I would make a guitar video or an amp video. But pedals, I kind of stick to just what I like because there's just so many pedal videos. You know what I mean? And it's so much work to do a video for me. Either way, a video takes about the same time for me. It takes about a day to 2 days, depending on how I do it. C Drive 300. Great question. Says, Phil, are some stainless steel frets harder than others? That is my understanding. In fact, I tried to test that, by the way. I was given some information from a manufacturer who makes frets, and there's all kinds of, there's different hardnesses for nickel frets as well, and there's different hardness for stainless steel is my understanding as well. And the interesting part was I was told when this was being explained to me that the more stainless steel, the more pure, like harder it is, the more magnetic it would be. And that's what I found interesting, because what I found is very few of the stainless steel frets can I stick a magnet to. So I don't know. I don't know. But yes, my understanding is there's different degrees of how strong they are. And what's tough about that is when dealing with manufacturers, what I find is almost all of them have no idea what their frets are that they're using. I mean, you can get people like Paul Reed Smith to tell you and stuff because they actually know. Like Paul knows, the owner knows. But when you get into like other companies that are more populated with more and more employees and layers of management, by the time you get to the big companies and because Paul Reed Smith's not really not that big of a, it's a big company, but it's not like, Fender and stuff. It gets really hard to get certain information. Okay. Tampa Blues says, how do you change the strings on that many guitars? Well, I've been going through I went through a problem. I had a problem happen about, I want to say a couple months ago, and it didn't occur to me what happened. So what ended up happening was I got a bad batch of strings, and I, maybe because of COVID, I don't know. And in fact, you guys know, that's why I really talk about Stringjoy a lot, because I like Scott, the owner of Stringjoy and stuff. And so that's kind of what led me to start talking to Stringjoy more and more about strings. So I got a bad batch of strings. So here's why I say that. This guitar right here is missing the high E string still. This guitar is missing a high string right now. I have like 4 or 5 guitars that are all missing a high E string, and all for the same reason. They all broke when I was playing them. And and it was about the 3rd or 4th guitar that I broke a high E string that hit me, when you kind of, for a second, you're just thinking, going, how many strings have I broken in my life? And it's probably not 4. So I was like, so I broke 4 high E strings in a period of what, a month? So to answer your question, how do I change all the strings? I don't. That's why so many guitars I have 5 strings right now, because I break a high E string and then it's like that guitar goes into, it will get played when I get time to put a string on it. And like right now, I'll go, I got to do that tomorrow. But, I'll wake up in the morning and like today, I wake up every morning and there's a crisis email or crisis text or something's going on and I got to deal with it. And all my good intentions of what I'm going to do today is gone to handle whatever I'm dealing with. So, So let's see. And like I said, I do have the super chats all banked, so I will get to those. Hold on. You guys are talking about pedals, but I'm trying to see if you guys in your name you're directing that towards me. I'm not old, I'm vintage. Says I have 3 versions of the clones rather than sell. I think I might build another board. Yeah, I did that. At one point I had 3 boards. I have 2 boards now. I mean, built up with pedals on them. And one I consider my YouTube rig. In fact, I have a YouTube rig now and then a personal rig. It took me a while to do that. I don't know why I'm motioning with my hands like this, but it's it was a reality that I needed stuff for the channel and I needed something in my personal life to break free of it. So I have a rig now that you guys hear. I don't play, in fact, instinctively, I don't play any of the stuff that you see in the videos anymore. I've decided they make good videos. Like I love my 65 Deluxe Reverb. It's a great amp, but I don't play it when I'm not making YouTube content because I use it and I play it when I'm playing YouTube content. So everything becomes about, it's how you figure out when you're at work and not at work. Okay. All right. Dougal Dog said, just buy a bunch of high E strings. They're usually the ones that break. I have singles. Yeah, I have lots of stuff like that. But that's the problem is not the string. I have tons of strings. That's boxes and cases of all kinds of strings. Not only singles, but packs, but I don't have time. It's just the reality of things. Sitting down and restringing a guitar for a second to everybody probably is 15 minutes, but it's got to come from somewhere. I'm at least 1 week behind every week on something. So until that's not the case, it's hard to justify anything that's, Okay. I don't know. It's so quiet today. Okay, let me go in my reading. So let me get to some super chats that were posted on the other stream. The first one came from Martin Leahy, who says, I got my Albert Lee back from the shop. So he took it to a shop. The trim is now very stiff, went down to 9s. How do I fix it? I think that's a great question, in the idea that it's a big misconception that the strings will somehow change the way the tremolo will feel. And that's not the case. In my experience, the springs dictate a lot of how that tremolo will feel. And not feel like me, feel like how it feels. So my guess is the bridge. Now, what I don't know, because I'm not looking at your guitar, I don't know if they're floating your bridge, maybe a quarter inch or an eighth inch off the back of the body. I don't know if it's against the body. So let me give you both scenarios. If it's against the body, what I would do is open the back cavity to the springs, take a Phillips head screwdriver, make sure it's the right fitting so you don't strip the big screws, and then loosen the screws, each one, there's 2, loosen them, maybe 1 turn each one, then strum the guitar, pick a chord, like a G, open G chord or something, pick something and strum it, and then make sure it didn't change pitch, then loosen them some more, strum again, and see what we're trying to do is trying to find the moment that all of a sudden you strum that chord. So you keep turning each one until you strum a chord and all of a sudden it goes a little flat, right? And that means the bridge is now lifting a little bit out of the body, and that means the strings are now pulling more than the springs. And then all you do then is tighten the screws back. Don't tune the guitar. Leave the guitar out of tune the way it is. Tighten the 2 screws until the guitar goes in tune. And then that is more equalized in how the springs and the strings are pulling on that. And the tremolo will feel a little easier, a little smoother, so to speak. Now, if it's floating off the body, it's a entirely different thing. You might have too many springs. You might have the wrong kind of springs. So that you might have to change up a little bit if it's floating. Of course, you could always put a block in it and then go use the same method I just gave you. I'm hoping that it's against the body, because the method I just gave you is a super easy fix. A Phillips head screwdriver, a couple minutes of your time, you're dialed in. If it's floating, you're definitely going to want to change the springs. And that's because as you're pulling on those things, it's not about tension. It's about when you're pulling on it, how does that spring feel? Some springs have different feel to them because of the fact that of how thick the wire is that's spiraled, how short or long they are. There's a lot of determining factors on that. So that's how you adjust that stuff. It's a pretty straightforward process. So it's not a lot of things to mess up there. Although doesn't mean it's super easy. It just means it's on the easier side. I would put it as a complexity 1 to 5 as a 2 or 3. 5 being hard. Okay. Sal wants me to know, hey Phil, I just ordered a PRS S2 McCarty thin line. Thoughts? Love that guitar. I was that was on my sights as a guitar to get. And I didn't get one because I ended up getting something else. You guys will see in about 2 weeks. I think that video is 2 weeks out. But I ended up getting something. I have to. I have some videos that have to get done. So some giveaway videos. We have some giveaway guitar videos coming up. One should be Tuesday, but it might be Monday. So be prepared that there's a video coming very soon, and it's a giveaway. We're going to be giving away a PRS SE. From Paul Reed Smith. Paul Reed Smith sent the guitar to me, and they sent it to me to review, and basically agreed to let me give it away. So we're giving it away. And then once I get done with that, we have a D'Angelico guitar to review and give away from Sweetwater. Again, same scenario. They sent the guitar out, and then I said, hey, can we give it away? Well, yeah. And so, like I said, if you notice fourth quarter every year, October and November, I try to do some more giveaways because it's more towards the holiday season. It's a lot funner to get guitars, around the holiday season because a lot of players got to spend some money on other things. So I thought it'd be fun to do that. So, okay, we have Jeff. What does Jeff want to know? Jeff wants to know, wait, funny enough, Jeff's letting us know he got a new guitar today, and it's a PRS S2 594 thin line. So obviously it's a popular guitar. Already have the PRSs with 8515, so I'm thinking different pickups. I do like the output, thinking PRS Dragon pickups, love EMG, looking for high output burst bucker. I don't consider the burst bucker as high output. So, I've always said this. Burst bucker is weird. Naming of pickups is very important, I think. When I was naming pickups, I kind of really had years of that in my idea, in ideology. In other words, a lot of times, like the Screaming Demons from George Lynch, Screaming Demon, and everybody's like, oh, they're high output. They're not high output. Burst buckers from Gibson, to me, they're not. They're vintagey, very, very PAF-5'd. So, but I understand what you mean. There are burst bucker, 2s and 3s. I think one of them's higher output, and that gets a little bit more in that mid to high output range. Suggestion-wise, I'm going to suggest it's a PRS, and if you like the EMGs, you like the hotter pickups, I would go with the metal pickups from PRS, but that's what I have in one of mine, and I really like them. So, I like those. If you don't want to spend that kind of money, because they are a little on the pricey side, of course, if you like EMGs, then just put EMGs in it. You could do that. I still like 8185s and EMGs, or of course you could just do Seymour Duncan or DiMarzio and put something hotter in there as well. What's nice about that guitar is it's got a chunky neck, it's a big hunk of mahogany, and the idea that a lot of times when you put high output pickups, you got to worry about the highs being a little shrill and a little high and piercing, and that guitar is probably warm sounding, mostly because of that thick neck, just the way it kind of works. And so I would bet you could get away with murder with that guitar. Stick anything you pretty much want in there. So that's what I would do. But I like the metal pickups from PRS if you want to stick to that kind of vibe. But if you're looking for something else, go, anything more aggressive through those other brands, or like I said, go EMGs. Geek Priest, interesting. Says, I got a Katana 50 Mark II. I like the amp, except the dirty channel still sounds synthetic to me. Do you agree? What can I do to make it better? you know, like I always say, everybody's ear is different and it hears different things. And the reason I say that is because anytime you read comments like that, you're gonna get comments like, I have a Mark II Katana and I don't think it sounds synthetic. Well, you know, everybody's ear hears, like I said, things differently. And it's because of experience levels, what kind of amps you already play through. That's one of the downfalls. I hear it all the time. Somebody say, oh, I play tube amps and that's why I can't stand solid state amps. And I'm like, okay. And then I'll hear somebody say, well, I play, you know, real tube amps. In other words, because there is technically tube amps and then real tube amps, in the idea that some tube amps are some kind of hybrid technology. Some tube amps, you know, have some solid state and some tube. I know it's not. I know I said hybrid, but these aren't technically hybrids. There's just things in them that's not pure. And then of course there's more of this pure tone tube sound. So everybody has this degree of thought process in their heads. What I'd like to speak about is I had the Katana 50. In fact, it's funny. I had the Katana 100. I sold it. I got the 50. I sold the 50 when I got the Spark. And I do regret that now, only in the idea of getting rid of it. I don't know why I got rid of it. It was one of those things like, I'm not using it, I should get rid of it. But really, it was not a very expensive amp. And to have it around was pretty useful. So I might be buying another 50 because I keep thinking about it would be nice to have in the videos as a comparison for stuff. But my point is, I want to tell you that I agree with you. That's what I didn't like about the Katana 50. I was not a huge fan of the distortion tones on that amp. I can't say that I liked another amp's distortion tones, like you know, whether the Mustang series or the Line 6, nothing really, I didn't really prefer those over that either. But what I did like about the Katana, which is why I think it's a successful amp. I think it's successful because you know, it has all those sounds and a lot of players are going to play those. And also keep in mind, it depends on what kind of guitar you're playing through, how loud you're playing the amp, to what you're deciding, what you're hearing. So if you play an amp really quiet, I learned this, if this helps some of you guys, I learned this through recording for YouTube videos, right? Because I'm not a traditional like studio recording person. So in other words, like I didn't learn to record in the studio. I learned to record at home for YouTube videos. And what I learned was it was a very bad idea to record amplifiers with the volume turned down. And that's something I think was probably obvious, and it's probably obvious to some of you guys, but it didn't really translate to me right away. Reason why is this: when your amp is turned really down, okay, when you strum a chord or you play on your guitar, you actually can hear the string noise. I don't mean what you guys can hear. I'm talking about what I can hear. Because again, let's say I put the amp in the other room and mic'd it up, you wouldn't hear the string noise. But here's what will happen though. When I'm listening to the amp and I can hear the string noise of the guitar, the strings are gonna be very bright. Like I hit a note and it's gonna snap and have a high frequency next to me. My ear combines the low sounding, the darker sound of the amplifier and the brighter sound of the strings and puts them together, and all of a sudden it has a really brilliant tone. So when I strum a chord, it was really defined because I was hearing string noise mixed with the recording of the amp. If I took that same settings and turned the amp up and didn't hear my string noise, all of a sudden it would be dark and muddy, and that was because I wasn't getting the string definition with the noise of the guitar. So the reason I say that is back to the Katana. He could be saying he doesn't like the sound of the Katana because he might be turning it up and he might not getting string noise. It's very dark and it's not giving him the clarity he wants. So what I would suggest to you definitely with the Katana is run pedals in front of it. That's one of the things I've said many times, and every time somebody says, oh, well, it's got pedals built in it. That's great. However, I will tell you the one thing I really still am impressed with the Katana 50 and the 100, since the day I've tried the first one, is they take pedals well. They really do. Probably some of the best solid state amps for pedals, probably because they were designed by the people who made the Jazz Chorus, another great solid state clean amp. So if you're not liking the Katana 50's distortion tones and overdrive sounds, get a pedal and stick it in front of there. I think you'll be pleasantly pleased. I mean, I can get away with it. What I can tell you is the Katana 50 and the 100, whatever, the Katana series amps, like the Fender Hot Rod Deluxe, those two amps are probably the most used amps by industry professionals when developing product. So, and that's important. What I mean by that, of course, is that a lot of modern manufacturers that make pedals or make amps and build pedals too will use the Hot Rod Deluxe and the Katana as a testing point when they're testing out their products, because they know so many of you have them. So that's why so many of the products sound good with those amps, is because they test them against that. So there, I hope that helps. Okay. Hold on a second. Okay, so the next one comes from Greg. Greg wants to know, for the tip. Oh, he's just giving me a tip. For tip, tone, beer, whatever you want. Cheers. Thank you. I appreciate that, Greg. Derek says, my Les Paul Journey just bought two. So he had a Les Paul Journey. He went on a Les Paul Journey. Doesn't have a Les Paul. He's on a journey, like he went for a, safari. So he went on a Les Paul safari, we'll say that, and he bought two standards from Guitar Center, 50 and 60s, because I couldn't decide. Both needed 3 hours of TLC before they would play nice. My return for spite. Oh, might return for spite, and buy from Wildwood. Thoughts on Wildwood spec? I have not tried any of the Wildwood spec instruments, so I'm not familiar with that. I'm not shocked to hear right now that you're buying guitars, anybody's buying guitars and needing work. It seems to be consistent across all the manufacturers. Like I said, this is, you can't have record high guitar sales and record employment solution are problems, which is, making sure they're safe and all this stuff, and less hands on instruments, so to speak, for safety purposes, and not see some kind of negative outcome from that. The question is, how extreme is that negative outcome? And what's funny about that is, I'm constantly hearing it constantly about every brand. There's no brand excluded that I've heard from. Maybe, $5,000 boutique brands. I haven't heard much grumblings of problems, but again, they have when they're at that price point, they have the time to take some time to go over when the thing needs a little bit more TLC. So I'm not excusing that, by the way. Never confuse those things. But you have to be aware of it. I've mentioned this. A lot of the guitars I've bought in the last year and a half have had more issues than any of the guitars I bought in the last 10 years on average. And so it can't be coincidence, although it could be. I don't think it is. Okay, hold on. Okay, and this really is nice because I want to hit this one too. This isn't a super chat. This is the first question of the day. Came from Edgar, who says, "Hey Phil, because of your videos, my guitar knowledge has quadrupled in the last year. Should we expect a guitar to be set up when purchased?" This is why I wanted to answer this question, because it ties into what the other problem was. From a physical store and buy it. He wants to know if the guitar should have a setup from a physical store, not from an online store. Okay, so I understand where he's going with this. Here's what I like to say, and if you guys watched on the Phil McKnight 2 channel, I released a video, I think earlier this week, about Sweetwater's 55-point inspection. I went through the card and kind of went over the inspection, what was on the card, and I explained what I perceived as, the goods, the bads, and the of that card. And what came up on that video is what I believe is what I call the basic setup and the performance setup. So here is what I would tell. This is what I believe. I believe that if you buy an instrument, every instrument really should have a basic setup. And a basic setup to me means that it's playable, right? I should be able to, and I think everybody can create their own test for this, okay? And I've seen all kinds of versions of this test. So everybody does come to the same kind of vibe of this. And what I mean by that is like, for me, it's like I might test, like I play like I said, the G chord, the C chord, and then the D chord. And then maybe run, G minor pentatonic and play that. And then maybe play E minor pentatonic and do a bend, you know what I mean? And I have just a couple easy basic things. And there's a reason reason why I pick that stuff. That's like, to me, it's common chords, common scales for common players. So the instrument should be able to perform in that environment of doing those things. So again, what I'm looking for is an action that's not fatiguing to the hand, notes that don't choke out or frets that don't choke out the notes and have problems. So again, basic setup. All instruments need that. They just need that. So they should have that. Now, I could argue, and I'm sure you guys could too, at some price point, it gets so cheap, like a Glary guitar for $75. How can they do a basic setup? I don't know how I would justify that. But at some point, especially with dealing retailer, there should be a basic setup. Now, a performance setup to me is different. A performance setup is exactly a setup tailored for your performance abilities. In other words, what can you do and what you want to do, your personal tastes. And this is why I say that, because setting up guitars, what you do is you kind of lean into those two concepts. And sometimes I'll do an adjustment to a guitar, and then I just recently had this. I think one of the patrons, I did an adjustment to one of their guitars, and I set up one of the guitars, and I charged them for one and not the other. And they were asking why, and I was explaining that, like, oh, that didn't need a setup, but what it did, it needed a basic setup. It was basically fine, and it wasn't needed to be tailored in any more than that. So the same concept with this, you know what I mean? So to answer your question, if you get a guitar and it's not playable, then that's not right. It should be playable. But holding a company for a mid-price guitar should have a perfect performance setup. That's a tough thing to say. I don't think they should have to do that. I think if they do that, it's great, but I don't think they should have to. I think the guitar should just be playable with a basic performance. So yeah. So if you're getting instruments, especially Gibson standards, they're kind of pricey instruments and they're not up to snuff. Yeah, you can return them and get them from a better place, of course. Look, I don't know. I don't, it's one of those things, like I said, I'm biased. I really don't love buying my guitars from Guitar Center. So every time I've done so, it's usually an opportunity purchase. It's not something I prefer to go buy from there because they get handled a lot. They don't get a lot of attention to them, Patrick says, thoughts on the new Diezel micro amp? Obviously, I saw that because I just reviewed it. Hold on a second. And, so I reviewed the Bogner micro amp, the Diezel micro amp. I have the BE. They sent all three. They didn't send them at the same time. That would have been actually cooler. I actually prefer if I would have had a chance to hear all three of them before I started reviewing each one. Here's my thoughts. First thought is I kind of wish they would have just released all of them at the same time. I think there's a little bit of, it feels to me like it's, some of you guys seem, a lot of viewers seem like, now you've seen the Friedman, then you've seen the Bogner, now the Diezel. It's like, it's a little fatiguing. They're different, that's for sure. I'm looking at them right now. I don't know why I keep looking up at them. I'm sorry. What I will tell you is, of the three, the Bogner did impress me because I did buy a Bogner after playing that one. I bought a Bogner Ecstasy, which is a fantastic amp. The Diezel, I think actually sounds, I don't want to say it sounds the best. That's not what I'm trying to say. I want to say it's just got a great tone that I really enjoyed of the three. But I think if I can, and like I said, they decided to leave these with me. When I agreed to do the reviews, they reached out. Again, very transparent about everything. They reached out, the person I deal with at Boutique, who's actually not even in the United States, it's outside the United States. He reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in checking out these amps. Of course, I said absolutely. I told him, please, yes. And I told him, I really didn't. I asked for actually nothing. I said, hey, if you send them to me, we can RA them back. I just want to try them because, like you guys, I was really curious about them, and I kind of figured I was going to buy one. So if I could try them all, without, on somebody else's dime, I thought that'd be cool, and plus make some content. And they were very kind. They said, hey, you can keep them after you're done with them. And I said, oh, that's awesome. What I will tell you is there's another one coming out, and it will come out, I believe, in December, towards the end of the year, as you guys know, and I'm sure a lot of you can figure out which one it is. And there's, I think, even another one's after that. But what I will tell you is, based on the three, if I could only pick one, it would be the Friedman BE. And the reason is I think it's the most versatile of the three for what I would use them for. And for what I would use this for, besides, you know, it's just cool to have and it's kind of a fun thing to play with and it's got a good tone and stuff. It's really like, you know, if I was going to go over a friend's house and just wanted my own amp, I just kind of, you know, something small, portable. But they do sound great. And the Diezel does sound great. They sound really good. In fact, I was thinking about doing a video. This is funny. And if you guys think I should, you know, just kind of lean on me a little bit, I guess I'll give in. I was going to do a video comparing them against the Orange Tiny Terrors, but I actually got to play a Tiny Terror and it's not even in the same league as these. These are much nicer sounding. These actually sound like legitimate amplifiers, probably because, like I said, there's pedal technology in these. There's literally just the pedals with a power amp. So, Mad Chris 224 says, "Can you get intonation right with a clip-on tuner?" Yes. The answer is yes. The reason is, one, I do it all the time, but two, you know, the clip-on tuners, when people say they're inaccurate, their inaccuracy is in the sensitivity of them. It's not really anything else. So it's about what kind of tuner it is, what it's clipped onto. Of course, you're going to have issues if you try to, like, I wouldn't use a clip-on tuner if I was intonating a guitar that was in drop C. I'm not a real big fan of the clip-on tuners for low tunings. They tend to be a little bit jumpy and a little hard to work with. For preference, I'd rather use a nicer strobe tuner or something just a little easier to gauge and figure out and slowly adjust and actually see what I'm doing in real time, where the tuners jump a little bit, you know what I mean? Because the accuracy gets a little dodgy. So as you're making, as you're tuning the instrument, they kind of adjust in a very kind of jerky kind of motion. But yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I've done it on the fly. I've done it in the shop. It's done. I mean, it's totally fine. Okay. All right, a second. Let me go and grab some more of these super chats real fast. We have Neto says, "Hey Phil, today my Epiphone ES339 inspired by Gibson in pale and blue, which is a fantastic color, arrived. I changed the pickups to my on my first guitar. Congratulations, and it sounds great. Celebrating with a treat. It sounds like a beautiful guitar. I also I bought an ES339, but it didn't go well. In fact, it's funny. I've had two back-to-back. I wouldn't say two back-to-back. I've had two bad experiences with Reverb in the last 2 weeks. And when I say Reverb, I mean sellers on Reverb. I bought an ES339 used, and I got it, and it was the description was perfect condition, no cracks, no repairs, no issues. It was on, in my opinion, it was on the pricier side of what they're going for. But again, it was the color I wanted. It was in the condition, perfect condition. And it said, please inspect photos carefully. And this is why I want to bring this up. I've really decided that's a bunch of shit. And I just want to be really, really, upfront about this. I'm really getting tired of these please check photos in the comments of these videos or of these sale auctions on Reverb. The reason is it's almost like a cop-out. It's almost like, oh, you didn't see it, so therefore, it's not our fault. I'm like, if you're there, describe the problems with the instrument. Don't play games with the whole check the photos. So here's why I'm telling you this. I have a 5K 27-inch monitor in front of me. That's what I'm staring at right now. Okay. It's whatever the newest Mac is. Okay. I don't know anything about monitors. Nothing. I just know it says 5K 27 inches. Why do I tell you that? Because that's the monitor I used to check the photos of this guitar, which the photos looked fantastic. There was no issues. The guitar was shipped. It was a store. It wasn't a private seller. The guitar shows up. There's a big chip in the side of the neck. The chip is old. As you guys know, obviously with years of experience repairing guitars, I can tell when a chip has been aged. It's aged from years. The wood's discolored. It's been there. The guitar was like a 2000, I can't remember, I think 2004 Gibson. So, I mean, obviously this chip's been there for at least, 5-10 years. So anyways, it's not in the photos because that's the one section of the guitar they didn't take a photo of. So the reason why this was interesting was I sent a response to the seller saying, "Hey, I received the guitar." Sent a picture immediately. By the way, I film all my unboxings. I want to just suggest to you guys right now, start getting out your phone, go on Amazon if you don't have one, and buy one of those phone mounts on a tripod. Just get it. It's worth it. It's worth it. So I put my phone on a little tripod thing, and when the box comes in, I unbox it and I just film it now. It has nothing to do with YouTube. I just started doing this. So started doing this in the last year or so. So anyway, so I'm filming the unboxing of it. And of course I discovered the chip. I emailed them and said, "Hey, there's a chip in the neck. It obviously wasn't done during shipping. And by the way, it said check the photos," which I did, but there's no photo of the bass side of this guitar by the 9th fret, which is where the chip was. And they said, they were at first very nice, said, "We apologize. We didn't see the chip." Now, so that doesn't sound stupid. The person talking to me is obviously talking to me like they didn't handle the guitar at the store, in other words, so they didn't see it. They said, "Go ahead and send it back." The first thing I didn't like about the experience, and that's why I want to share it with you, was they wanted me to do a return outside of Reverb. They didn't say it like that, but that's what was happening. And so they said, "Yeah, we'll send you a label." And I didn't like the idea that nothing was going through Reverb. So I actually requested return through Reverb. Then I didn't hear from them. Then I finally got I think I had to poke at them a little bit, and I finally got the RA label. I returned the instrument. So I reboxed it, put everything back to was, shipped it back. The interesting part is, then they got my guitar and they didn't refund my money. So days were going by, no acknowledgement that they got the guitar, even though the tracking number shows they got it. So I put in a dispute with PayPal because Reverb now has removed a lot of the icons where you used to have, some kind of recourse with dealing with people. There was nothing I can do. It just said waiting for return. So I put in a dispute through PayPal. What was interesting about this and why I'm sharing the story is what happens next was really perplexing. Reverb then reached out to me and said, "Yeah, when you put in dispute through Reverb or through PayPal, you're putting the dispute to us, but we didn't sell you the guitar." And so they said, "Please remove the dispute through PayPal, and then we will get your money refunded to, from the buyer for you." Well, I responded with, "What if I tell PayPal that the issue's been resolved and you don't take care of me? I'm screwed." Like, why would I pay PayPal, right? Why would I have a PayPal service to protect me and then not use it? So here's why this story, which is not an interesting story, but why I'm sharing it with you. So after I told them that, they refunded the money back to PayPal. Reverb did. They got it, I guess, and within minutes. It was like within 10 minutes. I then, of course, the dispute automatically closes. I don't have to close the dispute because it's refunded. While that was happening, I actually bought 4 guitars, and so one of which is behind me. So let's see if you can figure out which guitar it is. I received another guitar. Now this other guitar, in other words, if you're doing the math, I bought 4 guitars, 2 had problems, 2 were fine. So the other guitar that had a problem, it got shipping damage. I pulled it out of the box, same thing, I filmed the thing. In fact, last Friday, if you guys remember last Friday's episode, I said, "Oh, I'm getting a guitar today." That was the guitar. I went downstairs after the show, opened up the box, pulled out the guitar to find the guitar has been smashed, and it looks like it was damaged in shipping. I reached out to the seller. The seller said, "Well, we didn't ship it that way." Yeah, okay. I kind of assumed you didn't ship it destroyed or damaged. So then they told me that I had to pay the return shipping back, and that once they receive the instrument, they will inspect it and then make a decision about my return. So of course, I did the same thing as the first time. I put a dispute through PayPal. And then, of course, Reverb reached out to me and basically said that they will take care of it, but they were asking me again to remove the dispute. Here's why why I'm talking about this. Although I have to say I'm happy with the way Reverb's handling this. Both times they basically took care of it. What it is it just seems like this is more. I keep hearing from you guys problems. I'm seeing it more and more. And to be honest with you, if I took the last, all the last 10 transactions before these on Reverb, I would say about 30% of the time it's not been a pleasant experience. I just didn't have enough to complain about or return anything or do any issues. I just said, okay, maybe it's my fault for not inspecting this much, or maybe it's this fault for this. But it's a very interesting thing. Both these were stores, and both these stores made it very difficult, which is sad. Now, the other thing I want to tell you is, this is probably important to the story. I do have two, as some of you guys know, I do have two Reverb accounts. One is my Reverb Phil KYG store, and I have a second Reverb account, which is, I'm not going to tell you what it is, because I don't want people to know that it's me, because that's something you guys complained about. You guys said when I buy stuff, if it's for me, I will, I'll have a great experience. Well, here's what's funny about that. I have almost no bad experiences on my Phil McKnight Know Your Gear Reverb thing, but every time I use my Alias Reverb account, it seems like I'm having some trouble. So it's interesting. I feel for you guys out there. And let me put it this way. It's bad enough to where I think just for me and my sanity, I'm going to stop using unless it's for a guitar for the actual channel to do a review or something. I'm not going to use my Alias one. I'm going to use my real one, because it seems like for some reason, if they think you have a couple 100,000 subscribers, maybe the service is better. And like I said, it sucks, but it just seems to be the way it is. So I thought I'd just share those experiences, because I keep seeing you guys talking about that. Somebody asked me, or somebody made a comment earlier, if I'd seen or know about the fact that Sweetwater sells used gears. I have heard used gear. I'd heard that. I've seen the website, but I know nothing about it. And the question was, what do I think about it versus Reverb? I have no idea. The problem with that, I can already see, is, look, Reverb at this point, just like eBay, at some point they have all the product. So that's what happens, right? It's I mean, you're going to go where the selection is. That's the thing. Like I said, overall, I'm not unhappy with Reverb as a whole, but like I said, it is interesting to watch the sellers out there be difficult. And I know it's tense times, because I've had a lot of attitude lately from sellers when I ask questions about stuff. Nice, polite questions. You get some really aggressive, verbiage back, and I always kind of go to the, hey, let's just keep it clean and nice, and I always kind of keep it polite. In most cases, they send a nice email saying, hey, I'm sorry I was a little gruff with you, but I'm sick of being asked questions all the time. And I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to spend my money with you. LPD Pedal says, shipping damage is a daily occurrence here. I don't know what's happening out there. It's ugly. Yeah, well, we ship a lot. So my wife, she does the shipping. She's essentially, her and my son are the shipping department. And we ship a lot. And the only thing we've learned is Europe is a little tricky right now to navigate for shipping. We ship a lot of stuff to Europe and China. I don't know if you're watching the channel, if you're from China today watching the channel, but I have shipped a lot of pickups to China, and which is it's awesome. Hey, it makes me feel good. Hey, stuff's going all over around the world. Not a whole lot of no damage issues, thank God, yet, but just some weird shipping issues where sometimes the shippers aren't delivering and doing weird stuff. So that stuff gets a little tricky. So the bullsheet wants to know, Phil, is roasted maple a crock of bullshit? Interesting. No, I don't think so. I like the idea of roasted maple. I think it's here to stay. I think it's the future of guitars. I think, again, I've said this many episodes ago, that I think inexpensive guitars can really benefit from just roasting the necks. It seems like a really good process to get things done and get consistency with wood and quality. And but like I said, and I talked about it on the Reverend review, that I really don't like it when they cook the wood too much. I find that it gets a little too brittle and a little too hard, and it's just not what I prefer. What I will tell you is that if you're into, and this is why I point this out, if you're into, Wingay or, Ovencool, wood, hardwood necks, if you're into that stuff, you would probably like dark roasted necks, because it really kind of does the same effect. It has a really hard, almost like carbon fiber necks, obviously. And so I'm not really into that. What I want is them to roast the maple neck and color it a little bit, not with coloring, but, roast it to it darkens a little bit. I think it looks a little cooler. And I think it's just again, you don't have to deal with the fret sprout and all the other stuff that you have to deal with, unless, of course, the fretboard is a different piece of wood, like maple or rosewood. I'm sorry. Okay. See, I talk about roasted and you guys are talking about something else. All right. We have Stout Coffee says, hey, have you seen Glenn Fricker's recent video about speakers and the cab largely dictating your tone? What do you think about that? I'm very cautious about saying any particular thing is a tone. It creates the tone, or this is 90% of your tone, or this is 20% of your tone. The problem with that is, and I've said this before, it's your instrument is all the things that make the sound. So like I said, it's I've said this, I'm kind of repeating myself from an episode before. It's in your head, then it's in your hands, then it's to the strings, you know what I mean? Then into the pickups, through the electronics of the instrument, to the cable, to the input of the amplifier, to the amplifier, or whatever pedals you have in play, to the wire, to the speaker. All of those things are the tone. And so to me, to say one thing, I mean, and according to what you're saying, he's saying it's largely. I don't know if I could say largely. It has a huge impact. There's a reason why I have multiple cabinets. Again, I have to have different cabinets, different speakers to do the videos, because again, I'm demoing a product and I need it to sound need to sound good, but I need it to sound like, something that you guys will understand. You know what I mean? If I had this crazy cabinet with 4 Blue Alnico speakers in it, no one would really have a reference of that. Because like Glenn's saying, that cabinet would have a sound and every amp would be then colored by that to some degree. So everything is going to play into that. So I don't know if I would necessarily worry about, your speakers or your cabinet. You know what I mean? But yeah, it has a huge effect, of course. I believe that. Think about this. I will say this, and I've said this before again. I use vintage 30s. That's the speaker I like. But as I've said, I use the same vintage 30s. I've had the same vintage 30s since, I'm trying to think back. Let's see. Oh, maybe 1998. So if you guys have seen, I'll go, oh, I have a new cabinet but I'm swapping. I'm using the same vintage 30s. I've had them. I just like them. I've been working them in. If I change cabinets, maybe it's a tone reason, maybe it's aesthetic reasons. There's all reasons why I would change that stuff. But yeah, it's part of the tone, but I couldn't say it's all the tone. By that logic, a EQ pedal and anything in that mix would change it. So I use just like you guys, or a lot of you, I use obviously different cabinets, different speakers, but also I use cab 2 notes products, and I have the aux. Like I said, I have the aux system. I have all kinds of interfaces and stuff like that, and attenuators, and they all have an effect. Think about this: attenuators have a huge effect. I plan to have a video. You guys requested a video of the aux because we talked about using my Rock Crusher and 2 notes versus my aux. And in that, I'll explain how it changes your sound dramatically and why I like certain amps with the aux and certain amps I don't like with the aux. And that's how it works for me. And then think about this. And then once you argue all those components for tone, then you have to argue your ears, right? How they perceive things. But it's the whole point of making content like this is the whole point of content like Glenn's, like mine, like, every other YouTube channel that's making content, is really to present an idea to you, and then hopefully start an exciting journey for you, is the idea. I find the best content is that's what it does. That's what it does for me when I watch it. When I watch great content, I'm excited to do something, try something, or talk about something. So obviously it works because we're talking about it today, his discussion. But yeah, like I said, I think speakers and cabinets matter a lot. And I'm sure if you want to assign a percentage to them, I could come up with a percentage. But like I said, it's one factor of it all. Phil, thoughts on, Witchell wants to know, Phil, what's your thoughts on the Eminence Texas Heat? I like that speaker, just like a lot of the Eminence speakers. There's something about Eminence speakers I really like for some reason, and I can't tell you exactly why, because I don't remember. It was too long ago. And I have so many different speakers now, even now. For some reason, the vintage 30s just became this thing that I understood. In other words, like, I've heard them so much that, and in the speakers in the cabinet, especially the cabinet, because I have this cabinet I've been using forever too. And especially when I try an amp. So I like to do this thing where if like right now, like the Diezel that came this week, or, the Engle Iron Ball, like if an amp shows up, before I present it to you guys, one of the things I like to do is plug it into my 212 cabinet with my vintage 30s that are, like I said, 20 plus years old. And why? Because I know that cabinet, that cabinet, the way it sounds. I know the way it sounds. Whoops. Whether I put, a Bogner through it, a Fender through it, a Marshall, the Engle, whatever I put to that cabinet, I know what tone is the cabinet and the speakers and what is the amp. And so that helps me decide like what the amp really sounds like. And then from there I can go, okay, let's how do it. But like I said, that's why sometimes, like if you made videos that were really helpful to people, you would have to try an amp through like 20 different cabinets, 20 different speakers. But the problem is who would sit through all that? I wouldn't. I'm sure. And in 5 you're going to go, I would. That's why some channels make content like that. But realistically, at some point when you're editing, you have to figure out how to not make a video 2 hours long. On one subject. It's a lot. It's a documentary. They make whole documentaries that are an hour and a half. You can't, so you're making a documentary about an amp or a cabinet. I'm not old, I'm vintage, says I'm rather married to vintage 30s. Yeah, I like I said, I don't ever want to confuse you guys with why. I don't think they're superior. I don't have a theory about why they're the best. Nothing like that. I just know how they sound, and I know what of them I like. My 412 cabinet has V30s, but crisscross. It's GT75s, 2 GT75s and 2 V30s in crisscross. I like that combo too. Okay, so Lidface says, let's talk Strat tremolo screw hook part variations. Screw holes in the body are in different places, okay, than on the Callahan vintage trim piece. How on earth should I remove Clouson tuner bushings? Lidve, this question is way too intricate from what I can tell for like verbal communications. I would need to see stuff. I understand what bridge you're talking about, but I'm not sure what the actual issues are. So that's something I would definitely recommend. If you send me a picture, I could probably do better and get you through that problem that way. Andy says, Phil, do you feel like the current trend of roasted necks? Oh, you already did this. This is a fad. No. This is a different viewer, but same kind of question, right? Huh. Interesting. It says, do you think the current trend of roasted necks are a fad, or do you think it's here to stay? It's definitely here to stay. So, like I said, it's consistency. The manufacturers need consistency. We all know that. That's the demand is impossible. Grover Jackson once was in an interview and he said something interesting. He said people want machine tolerances and perfection and consistency on something that's basically a living entity, which is a piece of wood, right? And I thought, yeah, that's a very, very perfectly said. Everybody wants the perfect guitar. Think about that. That's tough. You know what I mean? It's a tough thing. Everybody who builds guitars will tell you, everybody who works on guitars will tell you, they're not all equal. There's just no way. And I mean, not different brands and different models. One model, one brand, over and over again, They're not the same. So the fact that everybody wants the same guitar consistently perfectly, it's almost an impossible task. So roasted maple necks I think are one step in that direction to give us this consistency of how things are going to be, and necks can be. So, okay. Alex says, I spent the funds, okay, got a professional 2 Strat, okay, in Miami blue, nice, and I'm in love. Push knob is comically high in the on position. Okay. Is there a way for it to be lower? Yeah, of course. You can push it down. It's just pushed in there. So it should be, when you push it down, it should be flush with the top of the knob. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, is on the Professional 2 series of Fenders, they use a knob, a plastic knob, because it was a Strat, right? Let's make sure, because if it's a Telly, it's a metal knob. It just said Strat. So it's a plastic knob, like you guys are all familiar with the plastic Strat knob, except for the center of the knob where it says volume. You can push that in. It's like a button. It's a secret button. Some of you guys have seen this. Some of you guys have not. But in his case, what he's saying is when he pushes the button to have it pop up, it pops up way too high. So you need to make sure that when it's depressed, it's flush with the ring of the top of the knob. And if it's slightly higher than that, then you just need to, when you push down, just push in a little bit harder and it will push down in there a little bit. Like I said, don't force it. You can't really, I don't want to say you can't break it, but it's not a very delicate thing, but it's obviously doesn't need a lot of force to fix it. Brian S. Guitars. Okay. Says, tell us the story of the Les Paul Studio Silverburst back there. What? He's talking about that guitar. Ta-da. Yeah, that's simple. I told you guys that Les Paul Studios are amazing and you should never get rid of one. And then that weekend, I was hanging out. It was me and Ralph Saturday. Ralph likes to come over on Saturdays, and sometimes we have a barbecue. That's a thing me and him do. And and we watched the Foo Fighter documentary. And I was very hyped on guitars, on watching the Foo Fighter documentary. And I go, oh, I need a studio again in my life. And I was looking online, and I found that one. And so I got it. It's a very unexciting story. So now I have a Les Paul Studio again in my life. It's a very nice guitar. It's used. It's got a little bit of nicks and thing. The seller was on Reverb, and it was a very, very pleasing experience. And the price was really good. Way higher than what they used to be, of course, but relatively reasonable for the price. And I just wanted a Silverburst. As you can see, it sticks out. It's really nice. Something cool. And it lined up perfectly. As you guys know, I thinned down some guitars, of course, and then I was like, oh well, maybe try something new. Okay, let me refresh this. Okay, I just want to thank TJ for a super chat, and then Shawnee is a Cubs fan. Sorry, buddy. Says, Phil, I just bought a PRS S2 McCarty this week. This is my first PRS guitar. I like S2. Like I said, I've said this over and over again. I think S2 is like this. I think they're going to be, I don't know if I could ever say collectible or valuable. I would never kind of say that. But I think there's something to love. Just like somebody's mentioning, David's talking about Tribute is the new studio. So like Tribute Gibsons, there's something to love about the more affordable layers of the high-end brands. So for instance, like Gibson and the Studio, right? Fender and the Player series, right? Is that what it's called? Performer series? Is it the Performer? I mean, can't keep track of all this stuff. Which is their mid-tier, or I should say their lowest tier of the USA made stuff. There's something about guitars that are from the boutique high-end brands or the high-end brands, but to me, they're just not, it's not about how they look. It's not about, the details like the standard Les Paul. It's not about the binding. It's not about the stuff. It's just about getting down to the basics, whether it's got 3 pieces of wood in the body versus 2 or 1 or whatever the thing is. There's just something about those guitars that I really, they appeal to me. It's like kind of like why I like my SG. I like things that are utilitarian. You know what I mean? I just want to use it, and I like having a piece of art guitar for sure. There's something exciting about that. But there's just something to me about a guitar that is, it's not cheap. It's not expensive. I mean, it's both those things, but you understand what I'm saying? It's in the middle and it's just something nice. And so I like the S2s. And so, I mean, especially the 594. Like I said, I would definitely consider getting a 594 S2. That would be a guitar I would definitely consider me personally getting. As you remember, they sent me one, and I ended up getting rid of that and my real 594 to get the hollow body. And I don't regret that decision. It was definitely a smart move at that time, because if it wasn't for... And in fact, it was funny when I was looking at pod clips the other day, like in other words, like clips, I found that clip, and it was the clip of me talking about that's the most expensive guitar I ever bought, which was the Hollow Body 2 I bought last year from PRS. And I will tell you this, if it wasn't, talk about a perfect storm, if it wasn't the perfect amount of COVID sadness, overworked to hell, slight probably depression at the time for sure, especially, all of us sometimes not realizing how depressed a lot of us were last year. Some of us did, but some of us didn't. It's been a really freaking ordeal. No matter, and everybody's experienced a different grade of it. So again, I understand I didn't get it as bad as some people, so I don't want to, take away from anybody who's had it much worse than me. But no matter how you had it, it's still going to be very personal to you. And of course, all the things that happened last year, and I think all those things kind of came together. I was just actually talking to Matt at Texas Toast this morning about something, and one of the things that came up was I was talking about the fact that I mentioned to you guys I don't have a car anymore. I don't own a vehicle anymore. That I have 2 kids that drive now, and so there's 3 cars between my wife and the kids and the 3 cars. And what happened was I owned my truck outright. I sold my truck, and the reason I did it was my kids, as they do, had a small accident in the parking lot. And although no one was hurt, thank God, and the damage was minimal, my insurance went just pounded me into the dirt. My wife has switched now 3 times with insurance companies, adjusting, but still, it's just epic numbers. I wouldn't even want to tell you guys. Some of you guys probably have weak hearts, and I could probably kill you guys if I told you what I'm paying in monthly car insurance, given that we haven't had any accidents or any issues, and we're not driving. But the reason I tell you guys that story is that guitar was an accumulation of like, okay, I sold a bunch of guitars. I'm working all the time. Everything kind of sucks right now. We can't take vacations. The vacations we had planned felt, obviously because of COVID didn't happen. I sold my truck because I really don't need it. And I go, damn it, I'm going to buy this guitar. So I bought that guitar, and I don't regret it, but I'll never do it again, ever. There's no scenario in my life where I think I'm going to buy a guitar of that caliber again, price-wise. That was just obnoxious. As you guys know, I've said this many times over the years, I will never buy a guitar over $2,500. That's really technically the only guitar I think I've ever spent over that dollar amount for. I'm sorry, I've got sidetracked because I'm not old. I'm not old. I'm vintage. Says, why aren't you not with USAA? I don't want to talk about car insurance, but I will tell you, I think we were, and now we've jumped 3 times. Look, if you guys, some of you out there may know this experience, okay, and I hope you do and don't at the same time. I have 2 teenage children in my home, both with a car, and one has an accident. They hammer you. They hammer you. There's no way out of it. Like I said, we can, and as soon as you adjust and get a different company, they slowly start raising it up again. We just got a little bit longer to go. You got to get past the grace period of that time period or whatever. But you can't have 2 teenage children driving in your home and one have an accident on file. It's horrific. It's carte blanche for them to basically hammer you. So, all right. Yeah, you guys got all kinds of comments. I might have to tell you guys how much I pay. You will have a heart attack. Okay, so we have Clown of House Cats. Clan, you're not the clown. What am I? That's one of my new thing. I'm just going to read it wrong anyways and then say it right. It says, I took your advice in selling that guitar that gained value even though I play it. Got a big profit and I buy a different guitar, but I still... it still stings to sell. Yeah, of course. You have to, obviously, like all of you, have to make the decision yourself. What to keep, what to get rid of. And again, like I said, I've been very lucky that none of the guitars that I truly love have... When I mean love to play. There's guitars I love in the idea that I like to play, touch them and look at them and play them a little bit, and they're kind of nice to have, some kind of lifelong dream. There's a little bit of this, in play. But all the guitars that truly I bond with, that I've had for years now that I play, none of them have gained so much value that I have some kind of guilt about owning them and not, cashing out. It's just, I don't know. Like I said, Pedro says, measuring neck relief and string height for setup is done the same on a compound radius fretboard, question mark? Yes. Yeah. Nothing would change. Do you like the neck straight as possible? It depends. And I hate answers like that. So I hate giving you answers, the politician answer. Oh, it depends on the situation. But here's what I say. I'll keep it easy. Yeah, of course, I would like the neck straight as possible, but there's certain guitars I don't. So let me give you an example. I don't like my Strat necks super straight. I like a little bit of relief in them. The Les Paul necks, for some reason, I like them super straight. My SG is like probably bone straight, probably stupid. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I mean, the action on my SG that you guys keep seeing me play in the video is super low. It's an effortless guitar to play. And here's why I say that. This is why maybe I can articulate it a little better. The neck being bone straight and the action being low, which is different things, but it's still part of the same way I'm going to explain it. Also has to do with what bridge and how the tension feels on the guitar. Like, to me, I like my Tele neck a little straighter than my Strat neck because I feel like when I bend and play, I want, the bridge doesn't move, nothing moves and it's very stiff. So I kind of like having a little bit of grip. So the string being, the neck having just a little bit of relief around the first to fifth fret, you know what I mean? Just a little bit of that right there as the neck bows. That's where I notice the most relief is towards the center, towards the top. I actually like that. So again, it depends. But yeah, as a generically, I would say, yeah, I like all my necks to be as straight as possible. But in some cases, like I said, there is exceptions to that when I don't want that. And hopefully I highlighted enough of them. Robert says, hey Phil, I have a PRS S2 594 and I had it set up recently, but it still continues to buzz on the low E near the nut when playing open. Any suggestions? Sure, of course. Well, setup and buzz are, obviously not inherently, setups don't guarantee that there's no buzz. They should. So, sounds like to me, I want to see if I want to read here. It says it's on the low E near the nut. What I don't know is if you're saying it's open, when you're hitting open. Oh, when playing open. So that is probably your nut. Now, there's two things causing that. One, could be the neck is too straight. You might need a little relief. That might solve the problem. So I just want to let you know that, especially on a PRS. One thing I'll say about this. If you ever want a guitar that just sets up super easy, it's going to be like a Paul Reed Smith S2 core guitar. Not because they're made better than anything else. They're just not very complicated in the setup process. It's almost impossible to strip those truss rods because they're essentially a socket. Use a socket wrench or a socket pipe. They call it the little pipe. But in your case, you might need a quarter turn relief. That might solve the problem, but I'm just saying might because I don't think it is the case, but I wanted to let you know that is a solution. What I think it is your nut slot's cut too deep. So to check that, what you can do is you can take a piece of paper, and loosen the string and stick the piece of paper, like I said, just kind of stuff it into the slot on the low E and put the string on that. And when you tighten it, it's going to kind of push the paper past the nut, just kind of, kind of figure that out. I think I have a video where I show you guys. Anyways, you back off the piece of paper, and when you tighten it, slides into the slot. What you're trying to do is raise that string. Just raise the string a little bit. So like I said, use a piece of paper, use a business card, whatever it is, put something in there, and that will raise it. You'll see you don't need to raise it very much. If the buzzing goes away, then the nut slot is cut too deep. You have two solutions for that. You can get a new nut from PRS. So you can get a prefab nut from them. You could take it back to the tech and have them cut you a new nut, or you can fill that nut slot and then file it out yourself or have that done. It's a graphite nut, so well, I don't know. Do the 594 S2s have? Let me look. Hold on a second, because the 594's cores are bone nut, which is perfect, or it's at least a ivory type material. S2. I just assume the S2s have a graphite nut, but I didn't look. So let me look. And I love it whenever there's a million pictures, but not what I need to see. Okay, go here. Yeah, it's graphite. So the S2 is graphite. So I have a video where it shows you how to use baking soda and super glue. You can still use that. You can use graphite powder too, but it's just use the baking soda. It'll look a little crappy, but it'll work, and you can fill that in there. There's a whole video I have on that. Just watch that. Shows you how to fill that in and do that. And then that will get you past that problem. But that's what it sounds like the problem is to me. So the nut slot's cut too deep. Grumpy Mike Guitar says, what does he say? He says, could I discuss the 2-point Strat style trim versus the 6 screw? Happy Friday. Cheers. Discuss it. Sure, of course. You got to understand where it comes from. Originally, the Fender guitars, Strats, had the 6-screw system. 6 screws screwed into the guitar, screw the bridge in. The 2-point actually happened later, and I believe G&L put it out, which is when, well, maybe Music Man too. But you get either way. Leo Fender did it post Fender. It's when he did that design. And then Fender, of course, incorporated it in there because they saw he was doing that. The theory behind the 2-point bridge system versus the 6 screws was that focusing all the contact on 2 points, there's less friction, right? Less contact going, with it, and therefore it's going to stay in tune better. It's going to have less issues staying, not staying in tune. I mean, you have to understand, these are things that they just did, and then all of a sudden, people said it was better. But I have Strats in both. I have 6-screw Strat guitars and 2-point tremolos, and I don't notice anything. They all stay in tune when they're set up right. So as we all talked about, if you guys watch my 5 things I think you don't know, 5 things you don't know about the PRS guitars, I mentioned that PRS has 6 screws versus 2 points on their custom 24s and stuff, but they use screws that have a bevel cut into them so that the blades the blade of the bridge rests on all 6 points of those screws. So there's all kinds of theories out there. I think what I notice is they feel different. The 2-point tremolo has a different feel. It's definitely smoother than the 6-screw. It doesn't feel as stiff, and so that's a little bit of a change that I noticed there. So that's probably true. Or then again, it could just be in my head, and it's not accurate. But that's the main thing by those two. And everybody kind of like I said, everybody has these theories like, oh, the 17-degree angle, the 14-degree angle, the 6-point screws, the 2-point screws. But what I've learned is, like I said, there's things you can do to guitars to make them better. That's absolutely for sure, and get you more consistency. But you can get good guitars even with all those faults. It's like a Telecaster when somebody says, oh, they use a 3-post bridge and they don't intonate. Well, that's not true. Some of them intonate perfectly. Some don't intonate at all. So again, you can guarantee it though. If you get a 6 saddle bridge, it's going to be more. It's going to be easier to intonate and it'll be more consistent. But again, there are outliers in all these things. And then I would say if I have a preference of a 6-screw bridge versus 2-point, I think I like the 2-point feel a little bit nicer. That's it. And again, that's just my feeling. Ray says, what do you think of the mixed Strat, the one that goes from yellow to red? Oh, is that what they're calling it now on the in Mexico Plus? You know what will tell you. I'll tell you what I think about it. So what he's talking about is the new Players Plus guitars came out, and of course they had the blue one that's like dark blue phase to light blue, and then they had the red. It's funny to me because I had that Ibanez AZ, that Tequila Sunrise that went from yellow to red. Everyone told me it was ugly. Like every comment is, that's so ugly. And then Fender does it, and then all of a sudden it's like, that's so cool. I just the way I perceived it. That's how I felt like it went down. It seems like that's all the comments. But me, I was like, I felt like it was an uglier version of the AZ I had. I liked the AZ one I had, but I didn't think this looked as nice as the AZ with the way they faded it. So what do I think of them? I'm not a huge fan of these fade 2-color things. I like that series of guitars. They look really cool. Like I said, it looked really exciting. But you know, I'm not, obviously I have what I like. So you can tell, I like some crazy finishes. Obviously the crackle finish is kind of crazy. But for the most part, I don't think I really got into the faded colors. I don't know why. And here's what's funny. I was even looking at a used Nags a couple weeks ago, and it's a faded color and it looked really cool. But then I decided I didn't want the faded color. Here's a question. I love it. It's from Josh. He says, is it true? And again, there's probably some joke in this, but I want to go with it. He says, is it true that people make pedals? They make pedals? Oh, is it true that people make pedals as a distraction to learning music theory? I think, do you mean like, do you use pedals, play with pedals as a distraction to music theory? I'm not sure how the question is formatted, so I'm going to go with what I think it is, which is it true that basically people get pedals and tweak on them to distract from learning music theory? What's interesting is what I call the non-existent argument, okay? And this is my observation on this side of the screen as the YouTuber watching these millions of comments over the years on all these channels, but of course on mine. There's this argument that doesn't exist. And obviously there's a clear victory when there's an argument that doesn't exist. So what I mean by that is you don't need an expensive, I'm going to give you a bunch of arguments that don't exist. Okay? Yeah, and then I'll prove to you why they don't exist. You don't need an expensive guitar to play better. An expensive guitar doesn't make you play better. You don't need pedals. You just need to work on your technique. Right? I'm trying to think of a couple more of them. Let's see. You don't need an expensive amp, right? What's funny about these comments or these arguments, and again, by the way, Josh, I'm not saying you're making that argument. I'm just saying you brought up the subject that's making me discuss this argument. These comments are everywhere across the internet. They exist in every format. In the YouTube and the Instagram and the Reddits, in the what do you call it? All these forum pages. There's all these arguments that don't exist. You need to work on your music theory, not your gear. Okay. Now, here's why I say they don't exist. No counter arguments are being made. I cannot find for the life of me the argument that says, "Hey, if you get a more expensive guitar, you're better. You play better. Hey, if I get better pedals, I sound better. Right? There's nobody arguing like, oh, you need an expensive guitar. That's your problem. Why you suck, right? No one's watching a video of a guy barely being able to play 3 chords going, oh man, if you got an expensive guitar, you'd sound better. No one's making the counter argument. So I understand why people say that. It's almost like they want to remind you, which is, if that's the intent, I think that's a great intent. Remind us, yes, we don't need pedals. You don't need gear. No one thinks you do. On that argument, you can say, think about this. Some people will say, you don't need music theory to play well, right? Or you don't need music theory at all. How about this? In the music theory world, there's all this music theory boxes you in and you can't free think. And then there's, hey, you can't learn to play music. You can't play great music if you don't know theory. There's all these arguments. But what I see is there's no real counter arguments. I think we're all very aware. is what I want to say. And if we're not aware, then maybe that's why it's a good idea I'm bringing this up. I have seen no counter arguments to this. So what I've thought about this long and hard is, yeah, we are all aware. I don't think anyone buying their 7th pedal is going, man, I really need this pedal. Maybe I should go home and go back and practice. No. I need pedals, not practice. They're very aware of that. It's like I said, there has to be a line, and that's why I like to bring up the collectors versus the players and how I bring them together in this theory, which is, if you collect, and I always use the term Legos, don't ask why. If you collect Legos, it's up to you if you, I always wonder, maybe I should go on the Lego forums and stuff. Maybe there is. Do people watch a Lego video and go, you don't need a new Lego set. You need to work with the Legos you got and perfect your skills of Lego building. Is that a thing? Does any of you guys collect Legos? Can you confirm that that's a thing out there? I would love to know if that's out there, that Lego people talk like us. The other argument, I'll tell you another argument that doesn't exist is like, same thing. I'm curious if it exists outside of the guitar the realm, which is like, everybody likes to tell you how they're not going to buy something or they don't have the money to buy something. And although I understand this need to kind of put out there to the world what you're saying, because, hey, I have that same channel. It's the same concept of the channel, is that I tell everybody what I observe. It's funny, like, I'll watch a video and it'll be like on this pickup. And I'll be like, oh, and the YouTuber will be like, this is a cool pickup. It's like $140. And then the comments are like, you don't need a $140 pickup. You can get a cheap one. And then I go, I wonder if like that happens like on the Lego. And again, I'm just using Legos. It could be anything else. Like, I wonder if like Lego communities go, $149 for a Lego set. That's stupid. And then I'm like, to me, the reason why I say this is I'm not sure why these arguments exist when I think while we're all here is we all love music, we all love playing music, and we all love the things that make music. And I understand that there's somebody out there, and I think they're right, by the way, if their point is we need to focus on the importance, which is the making of the music. That's more important. Look, the making music's more important to having stuff to make music with. In other words, you don't need 20 guitars to make music. You only need one. But like I said all the time, I already play music every day. I enjoy the hell out of it. Like I said, I love that I live a life. I live a life where I literally play guitar 7 days a week. And I love that, and I'm lucky, and I feel very lucky to be able to do that. And I know some of you don't get to play music every day or all the time. But the reason I tell you that is I laugh because I'll have somebody comment in a video like, you need to stop doing videos about gear and play music more. And I'm like, okay, but I'm already playing music all the time. I mean, I'm not going to play music every minute, every day. Even that gets boring. The Panda says the Lego argument works on your kid. Nice. So, oh, floopity doo, that's awesome. Legos, not Duplo blocks, build authentic. That's fantastic. I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I might want to start another hobby just for the experience of seeing if it's like this world. You know what I mean? I'm so immersed in this world daily that I kind of sometimes don't know if this is just how the world acts or if it's just something exclusive to the musicians and the gear community, this way that we all talk, and it's really interesting, like I said. But like I said, and to me, as I always point this out, and I always say this just because I know there's players out there too. Look, like I said, if you want to play 3 chords and own 50 pedals, that's good. Do that. That makes you happy. You're not hurting anybody. I don't understand the whole shaming somebody for that. Like I said, I like to play music and I like to collect guitars and I like to work on guitars, and that's my interest. And that's why I have a YouTube that revolves around that. I think it's very obvious that you can't have 800 videos if you're not seriously into something. So, but I do find it funny. Like everybody's like, the no argument. You don't have to have an expensive guitar to play great. But yes, that's a great point. But no one's arguing anything. I've never heard anybody argue the other side of that. Like I said, let me know if you guys see it. I would love to know. Susan says, whatever floats your boat. Perfectly said. See, Susan, you should have a podcast because instead of talking for 10 minutes, I could have just summed it up with what you said perfectly. Luke says, what hobby then? Me, train sets, maybe. You know what's funny is I know this is a thing I've been thinking about doing another hobby. I actually have been on the search for something else to do. I work so much now with the three worlds that I call it the three worlds. It's three things I do every day, and they all are around guitar. So when I'm doing guitar, doing guitar, and doing guitar. And so I keep thinking about doing something outside of guitar, which I've never done in pretty much my whole life. I looked at some hobbies and maybe I'll figure something out. Maybe. Okay. But if you guys want to send suggestions, I'm up for it. Julianne says, hey, just bought a Mesa Fillmore and I love it. I'm wondering why do some people hate master volume so much? And what are some characteristics of a good master volume? Thank you for the awesome show every week. Thank you. It's funny because you're the second question. Think about this. All these years, all these questions, there's certain questions that I've just never seen. And then all of a sudden I see it again. It's weird. You're the second person to bring up somebody not liking a master volume amp. And I don't perceive it that way. I perceive it as everybody loves master volume amps. And besides the fact that, I mean, don't get me wrong, we love the Marshall Plexi, the 5E3 circuit Fender, you know what I mean? Stuff like that doesn't have a master volume. There's definitely some charm and grace to those old amps that don't have master volumes. But I'm not from that era. I'm from the era of, we all had master volume amps. So to me, it was later that I discovered the amps that didn't have master volumes and there was a magic to them. But the non-master, to me, is not the exciting part of those amps. They just sound good. Maybe it's because they don't have a master volume, but man, I can't, like I said, the Plexi is unbearable. It's a beautiful sounding amp, but it just hurts. It hurts, like I said, it hurts your teeth. It's so loud. I would rather, like the Mesa Fillmore it looks like a fantastic amp. It's one of those amps that if I didn't have enough amps and I didn't have, because at this point I have a couple amps that I've acquired over the last couple of years that I wanted in my personal collection. And then of course, some companies sent out some really cool amps. And that's one thing that happens on the YouTube channel is one thing that's lucky. It's a blessing and a curse. A company will send out a nice amplifier for a review and they go, okay, you can hold on to it. And that's really cool. But it's also like, okay, well, that's cool. But now this other amp I had my eye on, I can't justify having both. So sometimes we'll back off and have the other amp. The Mesa Fillmore is definitely an amp I would probably have considered buying if it wasn't for the fact that I kind of, like I said, got other amps in my I don't know. I want to say collection, but it kind of is a collection. So what are the characteristics of a good master volume amp? Well, that you can play it at any volume level. What I found is it's not even about master volumes or wattage. Like I said, I've learned that that was what we were kind of sold as a bill of goods. This idea that somehow the wattage dictates how quiet the amp can sound good at. Sure, you can get a 5-watt amp it's quieter, I guess, or less loud than a 100-watt amp, but really that has nothing to do with it. There's 100-watt amps that that can sound fantastic at low volumes, and there's 5-watt amps that just cannot. And I have an example. Let me take a drink of water real quick. To me personally, and this is why I say this, because again, everybody's ear is different and everybody's going to have a different experience with this. To me, a perfect example of a failure of a lower wattage amp and a success is the Marshall Studio Series stuff. As you guys know, I bought the Silver Jubilee 20-watt amp. I bought the JCM 100 20-watt Studio, and I played through the 20-watt Plexi, their version of the Plexi, right? The vintage Studio. And all three of those amps have the same problem to me, which is they are great. They are not quiet. And 5-watt mode on those, all three of those made them thin and unpleasing to me. I did not enjoy this way that 5-watt sounded. I like the fullness of the 20 watts, and I would rather, and on all three of those amps, I would keep it on 20 and then turn it down. And I felt that sounded a little better to me, to my ears, than the 5-watt mode, which thinned out. But regardless, I couldn't get those amps super quiet or quiet enough to, I don't even want to say practice, because it wasn't about that, just playing at a level that was reasonable. They were just very loud for me. And here's why I mean that. What happened was every time I got into a spot where they sound good, I go, oh, that sounds great, but it's a little loud. And I'd back it off. And even a little bit, I go, see, now it's quieter, but it doesn't sound great. That's why I have the Friedman amps now. I bought the Friedman amps. And trust me, it wasn't by like any kind of desired choice or anything. It was just like literally like, what I want is this Marshall-esque sound, and I want it to be at a level that I can play it at. You know what I mean? Whether it be at nighttime or daytime. And the Marshalls just wouldn't do it, which is why I got the Pedal Pal, and I just run that through. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just running the Pedal Pal, the Plexi, and the 800 through. I'm actually running through my Friedman, and it does everything I want it to do, and it's fantastic. And so that's a perfect example of a a master volume amps that just to me don't, again, I don't want to get off subject. Let's get back to the track. I'm sorry. That's why I shouldn't read comments. I got to get off that screen when I'm talking. What I'm trying to say is that some amps, regardless of the wattage, just sound good at all levels. And that's what I like. And the Marshalls don't. For some reason, Marshalls just, there's a reason why it's called he's called the father of loud. Those amps just need to be loud to get into the range that they do. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The Pedal Pal pedals, what they do is, sure, they can make Marshall tones at louder volumes, but they do what Marshall does at loud quiet. And that's why I kind of lean into them. That's why I like them. And there's other great Marshall pedals out there. Like I said, you guys know Lawrence. Lawrence makes fantastic pedals. There's a ton of great pedals out there. But the Pedal Pal guys, they only make 2 pedals now. They've really they were making more and more, and they really learned what they got right, which is they got the 800 and the 9 and the Plexi down. I really believe that, so that they really got them down. It is creepy how good they got them to sound exactly like the amplifiers. Now, and I'm just going to go on a little tirade for a second, if you don't mind. Like Lawrence makes the 74 pedal, and that's a great Marshall pedal. It's definitely, if you're looking for this Marshall, your dream Marshall. That's actually, I want to put that perfectly. Let's say the 1974 from LPD Pedals, to me, is like the dream Marshall. That's the Marshall you hope you walk in a store, find this mystical, magical Marshall, plug into it, and you strum a chord, and angels sing, and this is this Marshall tone. And that's great. And that's what's great about those kind of pedals and his kind of pedals. The Pedal Pal guys, what they do is they actually capture the amplifier, just the way the amplifier sounds. And sometimes you're not looking for a magical Marshall because you're not looking for a perfect sound. Like for me, I like to play a lot of like punk rock, indie music, and I don't want something that sounds really good. I want it to sound like I said, more like the traditional sound of the amplifier. James is saying the Box of Rock is another fantastic pedal. Look, the list of pedals that I like for Marshall pedals are definitely a long list of pedals. There's a lot of great ones out there. But like I said, I only mention the Pedal Pal guys separately because these guys are hyper focused on something slightly different than everybody else is after. And doesn't make it better or worse. It just, like I said, it makes it a little bit different. The Super Lead 100, nice sign on, says the JHS Andy Timmons is a great sounding pedal for the Marshall tones. Of course, like I said, we could go all day. There's a lot of them. In fact, sadly enough, I really believe that I think at this point to get great Marshall tones, what I've had to do is kind of reside to just go to pedals. In fact, most of my pedals that I have are some kind of Marshall type pedal because that's what I've kind of learned to do, is to get the Marshalls to sound the volume I want. It's like Marshall as a company doesn't seem to have to successfully do that. The best they ever did is when they did those 1 watt heads, that series of 1 watt heads, but good luck trying to find those at a reasonable price now. Yeah, if I would have known, I would have bought them all back in the day, when they were $700 a piece, which I thought was ridiculous, but now, used, they're $1,000 plus all day long. So, okay. Hold on, I'm just reading some comments here. Okay, so Drip Topher says my orange Reverb Mark III 50 has a built-in attenuator that makes it sound incredible at all volumes. Why don't more manufacturers include attenuators built in? Because there's a lot of other factors going into that. You know, there is a lot of manufacturers that do it. I mean, obviously, like I said, the Engle guys have it built in. Dr. Z, I have a Dr. Z, and although the attenuator is external, it mounts onto the amp. So mine's mounted onto the amp. There are amps that do it. And in my experience with this is not all of them sound so great. You know what I mean? It's like I said, there's a lot of other things going on. I think the attenuators on the Engles sound really good. I've pretty pleased with them, although I don't lean on them very much. And it also happens to do with another thing I've learned about all the attenuators I've messed with. Okay. Whether you're the Aux, the Rock Crusher, the Tone King, all of them, there's certain things they do better than others, but one thing they all have in common is if you have to attenuate a lot, it's going to get dark and it's not going to sound good. So you understand what I'm saying? Like everything is about a light attenuation, if that makes any sense. Like the Dr. Z is probably my favorite one to kind of explain this to. If I plug up amp into the Dr. Z, especially with the Dr. Z, and it's got 5 clicks, I think, right? So it's like all 5 over is the most, kind of pushed down. The first one sounds good. The second one still sounds good. The third one's not so great, and then it just gets worse after that. It's like if you have to really choke down the amp, it's not going to sound pleasing. It doesn't have a lot of the magic it's like sucking some of the magic out of the amp. Yeah, E.R. Webster says H&K amps have again integrated in the amps very good. There's a lot of this, and there's a lot of reasons. And another reason why a lot of manufacturers don't do it is it's expensive. Attenuators are kind of expensive. So, who else? Like I'm trying to think of the amps that I have that have it. No. There's a lot of them that have step downs. I don't know if that's the same thing, but it's a switch that does it. Josh says there is absolutely nothing that can replace a cranked amp. Problem is even pro musicians don't get to turn it to 10. That is a very accurate statement. Yes. And that's why I said some amps just live, they live in sweet spots. That's just the reality of things. Some amps live in a spot where the Bogner is a great example of this. The Bogner amp, when it's turned down, sounds really good, but it's a little bassy. And as you turn it up, the bass chills out. And then if you turn it up too high again, it goes back into bassy for me. So that's, you know what I mean? So there's a sweet spot. Landon Bailey from the Landon Bailey channel says, I bought a Tone Master Deluxe Blonde Reverb. I had the Tone Master as well. And it says, I'm really impressed with it. Princeton's still my favorite. Yeah, the Tone Master amp attenuator, because it's simulated, right? It's not real. It's a digital amp, and it's not really attenuating in the back. There's no real attenuation. It's kind of like the same concept in the Katana. For those who have the Katana, same technology, in the idea that it's simulating, an attenuation. And that's why I think it does it really well, because I agree with you. In fact, one of the things that I think that makes the Tone Master Deluxe stand out is it can do what the Deluxe does at loud volumes quietly, where even the Deluxe doesn't do it that as great. The Tone Master is cool amp. Like I said, it's a really good amp. I really think it's a really cool idea. I really like the way they did it, executed it. And at the point when it came out, I thought they were priced absurdly high. Now, I still think they're high. The problem is that they made the other amps even more so now it makes sense. I mean, now $900 for a Tone Master is still, I think, ridiculous for the price point, but $900 versus the $1,500 makes sense. The problem was when they first came out, they were priced $100 less than the real thing, and they could spin all the corporate jargon they want about the technology and the development and all that stuff. I always get in trouble whenever I kind of downplay people's R&D. We have an industry, to me, that's funny. From some of you that obviously work in other industries that are outside the musical industry, you understand, like, R&D sometimes for, like, let's say a microcontroller for an airbag. That's some serious R&D, because there's a safety aspect to it. You know what I mean? Where tens of thousands of man hours are applied, and hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, are applied. And and then we have an industry where it's like, well, I did like 5 versions of this thing, and we tweaked the capacitors in 6 different ways, and we have to recoup all that R&D. You're like, and so I'm not trying to downplay that, because obviously, I have to do R&D too. But it's the point is, it just seems sometimes a little bit much. And Fender, I really believe that Fender could have priced those amps at the $700 range, and it would have been really a bigger deal. I think they would have hit a sweet spot. I wish they would have really came out that way. Like I said, it's the only overall complaint I have about the amp is that, to save 10 pounds in weight, you know what I mean, to get some cool features, but it just seems like it was a lot of money for it. And ultimately, like I said, I didn't keep mine. And the only reason, I've said this before on the Tone Master, the only reason I didn't keep it was the price. I just feel like it was a lot of money invested into a product and, into an amp that I just am not going to get a whole lot of use out of. And somebody said, what did they say? Somebody said, well, you're not using it to gig with. And I'm like, well, absolutely. And that's part of the problem too, is because I have amps that are just as light that I can gig with. TJ says Tone Masters are now $1,100. Is that what they are now? I thought I saw that they're still floating at the sub. I think the Tone Master Twin is like 11 now, right? Now, so I really think they opened up a new market with the Tone Master super reverbs and stuff. I think, and I think the Basement 59, if they do that, I think they'll be opening up new markets. To me, big amplifiers that are heavy, like the Twin, that are made lighter, is a good idea. I really kind of regret, maybe I should have got the Twin, the two. I again, this is where sometimes the YouTube channel corrupts me. I think to my own devices, if I bought the amp for just me that day, I would have bought the Twin. I bought the Deluxe Reverb because I was like, well, I'm going to make a video, and then I want to compare it to the Deluxe Reverb I have, and the idea that I want to be able to tell you guys, what it is I'm looking at. And then, personally, I just didn't find a need for it. But I think if I would have bought the Twin, I would have kept on to it. So again, that's one of the things that's about having a channel when you're trying to make content, and, so. Okay, hold on a second. I'm just reading some comments here. Let me go back to the questions. We have Greg. Greg says, just got my first tube amp head, Egnator Rebel 30. I had one of those heads. They were fantastic. Any recommendations on what to aim for a cab? I get the Egnator cab. It's a great cabinet, and you can get it for a good song. It's ported. It's got a decent speaker in it. It's built really well. I think it's like a 8-ply birch. It's a decent cabinet. They look cool. They match the amplifier. You could definitely find a deal on an Egnator cabinet for sure. That's what I would definitely look at, getting that cabinet. That was a great amp. The Egnator 30 was one of those amps that I don't think a lot of us knew what it was when we first got it. When they first came out, there was the Egnator Rebel 20, the Tweaker, which was the 15, and then the 30. And the 30 was, the reason I went for the 30 was it had reverb. I was like, oh, cool, I want built-in reverb. And it had the blendable power tube sections, and it had a lot of stuff going on. And I remember thinking, this is the greatest thing. And remember when I was talking about, kind of like I talked about the Katana a while back, about a year ago, about how when something comes out and it's unique and it's inexpensive, it's like everybody's like, this is the greatest thing ever, because it literally is. It's something cool, unique, and inexpensive. And then as it becomes like everybody's like, oh yeah, I have a Rebel or I have an Ignator, then you don't feel like your amp's is special anymore. And for some reason, you just kind of fall out of love with it. And I can tell you right now, going down a journey of amps after the Rebel 30, I think I could have just stayed at the Rebel 30. That's another one of those amps. Maybe that's a video I should make one day if I can actually map it all out. But there's definitely gear over the years that I've acquired that, now, you evolve, I guess evolve is the word, where we go to the next piece of gear, and over a period of time. And then if you look back, you're like, wow, there's definitely like 4 or 5 times where if I just stopped there, I'm no better off now than I was then. That was a great amplifier. I should say is a great amplifier, but I don't think they make them anymore. I could be wrong. I can never tell. They don't really push them that much. I don't know if they're making them still or they just have them. I don't know. A bunch of letters, mostly X's, says, Access Associates says, at what point does the law of diminishing returns happen when buying new gear? Is there a price point? Love the show. Sure, of course there is. Absolutely. And it's not, and I've talked about comfort zones before too, like, you're spending more than you're comfortable with, and then therefore it feels expensive. This is a different thing. The law of diminishing returns is definitely there. And it's, and here's a way to look at it that I've kind of, learned to kind of observe and look at it this way, which is, I once watched an interview with Steve Vai, and he was talking about Kurt Cobain and Angus Young, and he was saying in this interview, which I thought was a beautiful interview, he said, every guitar player needs to be as good as they need to be. So he's like, Kurt Cobain was as good as he needed to be in Nirvana. And it was a very, very interesting speech in this idea that, if you want to be a virtuoso guitar player like Steve Vai, then of course you need to play like Steve Vai. But if you want to play in a punk rock band, you need to be as good as the people in the punk rock band. And I thought this was an interesting speech, and I think it translates to gear as just as simple, right? So is there a law of diminishing returns on gear? We know that there is. The question is, where does it happen? And I've decided it happens with really your goals, not you, because there's the theory like you should buy better gear than you are, right? Buy an instrument that's better than you is a statement I agree with, which is buy an instrument everything should be what you grow into. But at some point where I think diminishing returns come in is that you can actually go, when you get there, you have no idea, but you know where you want to be. And if you don't, that's a great piece of advice I would give you today, which is picture yourself not 10 years from now, not 5 years from now, not 2 years from now. Picture yourself playing and doing what you want to end up at. Picture it in your head, in other words. Like, this is me playing that music, and this is what it sounds like, and this is what it looks like and feels like. This is where I want to be as an artist. And like I said, whether you're in your bedroom playing for yourself and your 2 cats, or you're playing in front of 10,000 people, you're a musician. I don't care what anybody says. You play music. There's performers, like I said, but then that's different. But musician. You're a musician, and when you're playing music, you need to not only have a goal, but you need to know where you want to be. And if your first reaction, I know a lot of you are going to have this reaction because I hear it all the time. Oh, I would love to be where I want to be, but I'm not going to get there, right? Like, I want to be the next Joe Bonamassa or whatever, and I can't do it. Sure, of course. There's obviously you got to know the limitations of being real with yourself, but you still need to know where you think you want to be, and you'll be able to picture it. Okay. And when you figure out who that is, who you are, when you are at that place you want to be, what you're going to sound like and what it's going to feel like and what it's going to be like, you can figure out in theory what gear you think you're going to need when you're there. And that's the law of diminishing returns. In other words, you don't need anything more than that. Okay. I know that's a weird way to approach that question. I've approached that question many times over the years with this show because it's get asked a lot, and I've tried to hit it different ways, not so much to, mostly just to make a different experience each time watching the episodes. But for me, and I'm saying that because I think that's just some advice, but for me personally, where does the law of diminishing returns come from? It comes from, or what it is for me, it's when I can't tell the difference anymore. That's really as simple as it is. So that's as simple as it is. If I can't tell anymore, you know, then I don't know if there's a reason to make the purchase. Okay. Next question. Let me get through this. Actually, let me do this real quick since we've 0666 is the last super chat. So let me get through these super chats and then we'll finish up the show. Chad wants to know, he bought an Iron Ball SE. Thanks for the demo. Can you explain the Evertune bridge to a hardtail guy? Pretty please. Well, I'm glad you got the SE and I'm glad you like it because I really do like it. It, like I said, it was a very hard video. That was one of those videos I would say, if you ask me 10 years from now or 2 years from now and you go, what was one of the hardest video reviews you ever did? That was it, because it was really hard to articulate what I liked and didn't like about it versus the Fireball. And if you don't mind, Chad, I want to answer a question. Somebody asked me earlier and I saw it, so I pinned it, but I didn't get to it, which is, he says, hey, Phil, what amp do you prefer, the Engle SE or the Mesa Mark V 25? And here's what I'm going to say about that and where I ended up with all this. On the Iron Ball SE versus the Mark V that I have, the Mini, here's what I will tell you. If the clean channel matters to you the most, I like the Mark V Mini. What I've decided is I like the Iron Ball SE in every way over my Mark V. I like the overdrive distortion better. I like the features better. I like, everything about it more. Except for, I like the clean just a little teeny better on the Mark V. So have I decided to kind of ditch the Mark V for the SE? I haven't decided that's the way I'm going to go yet, but that's the holdback. It's just that one thing. Because I like the SE, the Iron Ball SE's clean is chimey and clean, which is nice. But the Mark V's clean is chimey, but it's also fuller, right? And sometimes I like that. So that's the same thing. I had the problem with the Fireball versus the SE, which is the Fireball, I think the clean on the Fireball just is a little fuller in the room. And that's why I said a little bigger sounding when turned up, but the SE just kills. It's a fantastic amp. So back to Chad's question though, which is the Evertune bridge. I have no idea. Like I said, from when I told you guys before, I've worked on one once or twice years ago. I remember learning about it so I can make the adjustments for the setup. I don't know what. It's a weird thing. That's why I want to spend some time with the one. Somebody super chatted me some funds towards buying one. I earmarked them. I have it. I've been looking for the right deal, the right experience to buy the Evertune and do the video. So, I mean, it's still a video. It's just, like I said, it's like everybody, it's COVID. It's really just the market has been an interesting mess. I don't want to really pay an insane overpriced amount for an instrument that I'm just going to do a video with. And I have no idea if I'm ever going to use that guitar again. I don't know. My instincts tell me I'm not going to fall in love with the Evertune system. And although I don't want to really approach it that way, I need to be realistic. The realistic is that if I spend $1,500 on an Evertune instrument or $1,200 on an Evertune instrument that I play once in a video and never play again, that's a lot. You know what I mean? A video, if that video does 200,000 views, I would make a couple $100, and you know what I mean? And then somebody super chatted me a little bit for it. I mean, I'm still in the hole, $800 on a guitar I'm not going to use, and then I'm going to sell it. So I have to, like I said, there's a little bit of business strategy to this YouTube game that you have to follow. So I'm trying to find either a guitar I really think I'm going to like and stick with, so therefore it makes it a worthwhile purchase, or an instrument I think I have an opportunity to check out and maybe get out of after I'm done doing the video. Like I said, we'll get there. But to answer your question, I don't know, but I'd love to answer your question by doing a video, so that's why I'm still working on that opportunity. Jake says, tuner screw hole on a Les Paul stripped. Okay, any way to fix it? Yep, use a toothpick. He says, without a dowel or toothpick. Why? What's wrong with a toothpick? Does it bug you? Don't use a used toothpick. This is I'm afraid I'm going to scratch the finish trying to cut a dowel. Don't do a dowel. Do a toothpick. It's a tuner hole screw. It's super easy. A dot of Type-On wood glue and just a piece of toothpick. Shove it in there. Glue it, and you're it's fine. Yeah, you know what? trust me, if you took it to 90% of the techs across the country, that's how they would fix it, and you wouldn't even know. So, I mean, that's what they would do. I do use something besides toothpicks sometimes, which is I have wood shavings. Sometimes I use wood shavings because I just learned to do that because I can put like 2 or 3 shavings in there and then some glue, and the glue makes the wood shavings a little soft. And then I have a on my StewMac, which I love, this thing right here. I have which I highly recommend these. Like I said, I told you guys this before. They're super expensive, but I want to point out they did send me one, but I bought one too because I think I bought 2 of them. But they have a ton of cool little bits in here in this kit. And one of the things that not only do they have the bits that you can use to rethread screw holes in there, which is nice for that kind of technique. They have also the where's it at? They have some of there's one in here. I know I use it all the time. They have, where's the pointy thing? There's a pointy stick thing in here. For some reason, I can't find it because I'm in the dark, whether you guys realize it or not. And it presses in there and does it. So kits like this work really good for that. And you don't have to have a ton of tools, and you'll find 1,000 uses for that. But don't be afraid to use the toothpick. And there's nothing wrong with using the toothpick in that hold. I mean, again, nothing. It's a piece of wood. It's a piece of wood going into another piece of wood. It's fine. Like I said, if it emotionally upsets you, you can also shave wood shavings and stick them in there like I do. Paul did a super chat just to say thank you. I appreciate that. Rafi says, I got a 1982 Takai Silver Star for a steel, has lower end weird shaped guitars, shaped tuners. Wait, it has lower end weird shaped tuners? Yes, they do. And they are really stiff. How would you fix or replace, and with what? Those, like I said, I love recommending the UMP system, which is by Hipshot, where it has a plate, an adapter plate for guitars like that, or the ratio tuners from Graphtec, again, that have adaptive plates. Guitars like that, I definitely recommend that if you're going to replace the tuners, first get rid of the crappy tuners. Just pull them out, put them in Ziploc bags, seal them all up, right? Take a piece of tape, right on there, what they are, so you know what they are, and put them away. And then get the aftermarket tuners that have adapter plates, so literally everything goes in there. No new holes, no modifications. Your guitar is fantastic. And then if you ever decide to sell it off the guitar, because hey, and I'll explain that in a second. You can take all that stuff and put the original tuners back in. This is a question that's come up a couple times, not in the actual show, but in the comments of the replay of the show, which is, why do we talk about selling instruments? There's comments again like, I buy guitars to own them, I don't buy them to sell them. Everyone, for the most part, thinks they're buying a guitar to own it. It's not. Well, I don't know. In most cases, no one's buying a guitar to immediately flip it. That's not the logic. We're not guitar flippers here. I don't buy instruments as a whole. Like I didn't buy that silver Jubilee Les Paul. Like, I'm going to get a deal and then I'm going to flip it for a profit. That's not my goal. I bought it because instinctually I'm like, this is what I want. I want a silver burst Les Paul. I wanted a studio. Everything fit the criteria. However, 6 months or a year from now, if I'm not using it or I didn't bond with it because the neck's a different shape or there's something else, it might go. And I have to be realistic. Most instruments don't stay with guitar players. That is just a fact. You change it. You change first. It doesn't fit. You know what I mean? It doesn't fit. The vibe isn't right. The feeling's not right. The sound isn't right. There's a ton of reasons why instruments go, and there's nothing with making a rational decision on a product that you can actually recoup your money from to make wise financial decisions with it. I would love to live in a world where you go to a music store, you play a guitar for an hour, you find out you absolutely love it, you buy it, and it just never happens again. Now, there is a realistic issue, which is you understand that a lot of musicians used to keep their guitars a lot longer than they do now, and it's because, well, you have the opportunity to get out of it. It's very easy to sell things now. That convenience has made things a little tougher to tolerate things that you don't love. So, Terry Clark says, where's the best place to sell gear? The absolute best place to sell gear is to your friends. In my experience, like I said, I sold a bunch of pedals last week. I text. So if you're fortunate enough to have a lot of gear freaks, great. If not, meet some of the ones in this chat. Right. Join chat, join groups, interact with people who love what you love. The reason I say that is, for instance, you have a different set of rules when you're selling to a friend, right? You go, let me give an example. Let's say I want to sell this Keeley Red Dirt pedal, which I don't, but let's say I want to sell it. Let's say I'm into it for 120 bucks, right? Well, if you put it on Reverb, can you put it for 149.99 and can you make 20 bucks? All these things can happen, but sometimes it's not always about that. Sometimes it's easier to contact a friend and say, hey, I have a Red Dirt. I'm into it for 120. Anybody want it for what I'm into it for? Maybe because they are worth 150, you're like, hey, I'm into it for 120. I'm always upfront about it. I'm into it for 120, 135. Anyone want to give me 135? Now your friend, you're not dealing with a stranger, even if they're not local, I'll mail it to one of my friends. It's just a lot easier to deal with that way. So I like that environment a lot better. And it's a lot easier. Some people don't like that because they don't want to sell to their friends and have bad experiences. But generally, most of the gear that I have, if I'm getting rid of it, I really liked it for some reason. So, But other than that, then you have your traditional eBay, Reverb, Craigslist, all those platforms, and of course, stuff like that. So, all right. Now we have Thomas. Thomas did a sticker. Thank you for the sticker, Thomas. And then Steven says, I have a made in Mexico Fender neck with a thick fretboard finish covering the lower portion of the frets. Interesting. What? Fretboard finish. Oh, okay. I know what you're saying. Crowning, proving the problematic. I got you. So what Steven is talking about is the clear coat on the neck is over the frets. I think that's where we get it, right? Fretboard finish covering the lower portion of the frets. Yes. It's even worse so if you have a maple neck, a maple fretboard. They'll clear coat over the frets, over the tops of them, everything. So in your case, your issue is you want to crown it, but it's got that finish. What I do is I have a razor blade, and sometimes I heat it depending on the finish and what I'm doing and how it is, and I score all that off and remove it. Score it on the sides. I actually remove all the finish from the fret itself. It is a crappy process. I don't know of a quick, cheat way to do it. That's the way I do it. It's the right way to do it, which is remove the finish. If you're going to have to crown the frets and level and crown them or anyway, and they're encapsulated, especially in poly, which sometimes that's what the Fenders are, versus some of the vintage reissue Fenders, which are going to be nitro, you have to score that stuff and get rid of it. So there you go. What else? I think that's it. I think we did it. We did over 2 hours and we answered a crap ton of questions and had a nice discussion about guitars. Oh, you know what? And then I just on a finished note, because Magic Man says I'm really gassing over some ebony toothpicks. What's funny about that is I didn't even say that's why I use wood shavings. I apologize. When I mentioned that I use toothpicks, but I also use wood shavings, that's why I use wood shavings. I use wood shavings from the woods that I'm going to fill the holes with, if that's sometimes important. Mostly it's not, but sometimes aesthetically, might see some of it. And so if I know that it is, I'll shave off. I have little blocks of wood, rosewood. I even have a little block of Brazilian rosewood. I have rosewoods, Palfaro, Wingay, ebony, all this stuff, and that's what I shave off of. So there you go. All right. I know you guys are making other jokes, but I just want to let you know that's why I did it, for aesthetics, the way it looks. All right, on that note, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you guys for dealing with all the technical difficulties. Like I said, it was interesting dealing with the new OBS issue, but I'm sure it'll get figured out next week. And until next Friday, I think I'll leave you guys alone. Have a great weekend. Play some guitar. I will see you next Friday at 3 on time. And thank you for all the moderators, for Amanda, for Ben, for I'm Not Old on Vintage, for Brian, for Grumpy Mike Guitar. And may be missing one or two others, and if I am, I apologize. I'm scrolling right now to say thank you because, again, I want to thank you guys for dealing with all the stuff you deal with every week. Floopity-doo! Floopity-doo! See? I want to thank you for that. Everybody else who joined the discussion this week, have a great weekend, and I'll see you next Friday.